Hello and welcome to Sim.bc, where it is 21:26 in the evening and it's been such a long day. For once I've actually done stuff the entire day, and I know that sounds weird, but no, that's not what I mean. What I mean is it has been absolute carnage here today. I mean, I can't even fathom how much I've worked today. Just a minute, I'm just gonna take, or a minute is too much, but just a second, I'm just gonna take my water bottle because, as I've said, it's been absolute carnage today. From the moment I woke up, I went to get some food, and when I got home and I packed up my food, because I didn't have any breakfast at home, my mate just said, "Oh, I'm here now," and I'm like, trying to recollect, trying to collect my thoughts and be like, why are you here now? Why again are you here? And then it struck me that, yeah, that's right. I invited you over so that we could do one of our group projects that are going to be done this Thursday, and we've told the teacher that we've already started, or rather, we have started. We have gone back and forth with some ideas. We've found some sources. We read through some materials. So now we just like actually writing the thing, which went pretty smoothly. We wrote the thing. It took between, what should I say, 3 and 5 hours, somewhere around that, including getting lunch as well. And that was all fine, all good. However, after that, we thought, well, why not deep dive into one of our other courses, one of the other group works where we don't work together, and review how far we've gotten. And it turned out that I've gotten way further than his group, mainly because his group haven't, but how should I say this, helped him in the same way as mine has helped me. Now, my group haven't been overly enthusiastic about this either, so we should have been at the same, like at an even, what should we say, an even playing field. But I'd put some more hours in, so we were a bit closer to be finished than his group were, and I have one person in my group who works really well. So that's a thumbs up for that person. But yeah, then we got in. After that, we got into some French, and we did French for 2 or 3 hours because I have a French final exam on Wednesday. Yay! Yeah, I know that's gonna be all good, all crazy actually, because when we went through it, I felt like, oh, it's about 10% here that I don't know about. While my mate, who haven't studied French for 6 years previously, thought, well, this is gonna be hard, to say the least. But that's not why you're here today. You're not here to hear about my carnage today, about how much I've studied, how much I've been trying to, get my life under, what you would say, get some structure in my, planning life and stuff like that. No, you're here to continue the discussion and the compilation of culture. So that's what we're going to do, mate. And yet again, love the lamp. Love what it's doing with the focus of the camera, so that it's not as corny. But yeah, let's get into it. It's culture as learned behavior, something that we've already established, that you go through your life and then you learn stuff, even though you might be oblivious to it, even though you might not consciously think about it. There are some things, and I will take off my watch here because I've noticed that in some other videos I'm hitting the table with it and it creates some disturbance in the volume. But yeah, we've already established that these are things that are happening to us without us, well, I would say without us knowing, but that might be a bit take it too far, but without us knowing it consciously, as I said. So, the first point here that I have is understanding the effects of culture. Documents the systematic negotiation behaviors of people in different cultures. We do not focus on why members of a given culture behave in a certain way. That's one way of, well, cultures are learned behavior to watch that. The other one is pragmatic approach, concentrates on creating a catalog of behaviors the foreign negotiators should expect when entering a host culture. Now, what is this pragmatic behavior? Well, according to this slide that I've been provided with through school, this is more in my interpretation of the word how you create stereotypes. Because what this basically says, that with the pragmatic approach, you should catalog some of the behaviors that you think and that you will anticipate the foreign negotiators to do. How do you do this? Well, you look at the general picture. How is the culture in general? What does it look like? How does it behave? What are the norms? What are the values? You're trying to get perhaps into some champions, some artifacts. What can you observe about the culture? How can you use this observation in order to gain you as the one who's going to go in and negotiate? How will you draw on this to your advantage? But you will try to categorize, and when you categorize and catalog, well, yet again, that is the basis of, I would say, spawning a misbehavior. No, not a misbehavior, but a stereotype. Whilst the other one is document systematic negotiation behaviors of people in different cultures, which is basically you're going there and then you're trying to really understand what they're doing and see to the individual instead of the bigger picture. And you're trying to build your bigger picture from the individual rather than trying to build the individual in the pragmatic view from the perspective of everyone, from the big picture. So there are pros and cons to both of these. The pros of looking at the big picture first, that you will probably know some of the no-go things that you should avoid in that culture. So for instance, if you go to Sweden, maybe you shouldn't sit quietly for an entire meeting. Maybe you should pitch in and tell your opinion, because that's generally how we work. We have a very open amount of what should we say, idea sharing in meetings, at least according to my experience thus far and what I've heard from other people, that in Sweden we tend to have very open meetings. That means that the person in charge has equally as much to say at a meeting as the person who is the lowest rank. Even though the person in charge is the one taking the final decision most of the time, all the people's voices will be heard, so that you don't step on anyone's toes. So that's the best part about looking at the big picture and then trying to get to the individual, that there are some things that you know that you should do that you will do probably. However, if you start from looking at the individual, you will probably have a better understanding of the culture when you are done. So I would say in the long term, you should start looking at the individual, let them tell you about the big picture, then cross-reference that with already existing stereotypes to get a better understanding of the individual's perspective in relation to the big picture. Because if you look at the big picture first, then you might think this individual is kind of weird, because some people, they look to confirm stereotypes rather than challenge them. So if you look at the stereotype to begin with, you might actually catalog, well, the behaviors of the general person in the country, but also the individual in front of you. And that might lead to that you disregard some of the things they say because it interferes with the already existing information that you thought that you knew about them. So there are some pros and cons to both. I would say short term, go for the pragmatic view all day. Will make it a lot easier for you to not step on anyone's toes, and people will know that you're a foreigner there, so they will take that into consideration. However, if you want to build a long-term and long-lasting and long-standing relationship, a bit of a collective view on the entire thing, you should probably try to understand the individual and then build out to the larger picture. Now, I know that we're soon at the 10 minutes mark, and I try to hold these, approximately at between 10 and 15 minutes. So let's go through the next point as well, and then tomorrow we will talk about Hofstede. Yay, again! I know, but I think it's fun. So, culture as shared values concentrates on understanding central values and norms, and then building a model for how these norms and values influences negotiation within that culture. And that's what I said. It's about the values. You try to look at the internal, the individual, try to look at their values, understanding the central values and norms, and build a model for how these norms and values influence negotiations within that culture. That also goes to think, well, how am I in relation to this culture? How am I going to work? How will all the cogs fit together when I enter the picture? Because it could be that people are, working in a certain way. And then a guest come in, or in your case, a negotiator from another country, from another company, from another part of the world that's completely different. And the dynamic changes. Because people will say that, well, when it's only us, there are certain things we can skip because it's assumed and understood by everybody know about it. However, when a foreigner enters this, enclosed circle of people, they might change up the way they do things. It might not be that dynamic and natural because they want to include you maybe. Or this could also happen, they try to exclude you. So they forcefully jump steps that you feel are natural to be explained. And some other people in the group might say that, well, shouldn't we explain this to the foreigner who's here because he might not understand it, or she might not understand it. But some people in the group might say, well, we have a better advantage if we don't tell this person about what we already know, so it will make it more confusing for this person to get into the circle. So there are also, you know, this point is all about you trying to understand how you're going to react, or rather how they are going to react when you enter the fray. How will the different dynamics be? Will the dynamic be the same? Will it be changed? Why not? These kind of things. And then the second point in culture as shared values is cross-cultural comparisons are made by finding the important norms and values that distinguishes one culture from another, and then understanding how these differences will influence international negotiations. So cross-cultural comparison, norms and values. And this is yet again the same thing, that you're trying to view you entering the room. What kind of values do I have? What kind of values do they have? What are the norms that is the key norms in this dynamic that doesn't work when I'm there? Or even better, what are the key dynamics? Let's just say that they try to be as dynamic and natural as they can be, and they really try to invite you. How are their key norms going to interfere with your own? For instance, this is a famous case in Europe. When we agree to something, you nod like this. This is yes. And apparently I've heard from several people that in India, this is the way, or this is the way that you agree. Something like that. It's the Indian head wobble, I think it's called. For me, a no is this, and this is a lot closer to this than this. So if I say, do you understand, and they do this, then I might try to keep explaining something that they are like, yeah, I understand, mate. I'm with you there, you know? Well, I don't understand that they've understood, because their key norm of saying I agree is not the same as my key norm of saying I agree. So there is, you know, you get to look at the cross-reference the different cultures, especially the ones that you're going to visit. And if there are other people that are going to be at a certain meeting and you're abroad, or if you're at your own country for that matter, try to cross-reference the dominant culture with your own, if your own isn't the dominant culture that's going to be at the meeting, and then try to figure out what are some of the problems that other people that haven't done this prep time might encounter when encountering this dominant culture in the meeting. Because in that way it will be very natural and very easy for you, when you've done your prep time and they haven't done theirs, to say, oh, this is what they try to mean. And then that will make you look very pedagogical. They will like you. It will be easier to build long-lasting relationships, and people will say that's a guy or a girl who knows what they're doing. And that's what you're trying to aim for as well. Going to add this too, by the way, before we end this. If you are the dominant culture, or if people are coming to you, it's going to be very interesting for you to look up your own stereotypes. So just imagine that they are someone who's looking at the bigger picture, not the individual, right? The pragmatic view when they're entering. They will all say like, well, you're supposed to behave in this way. And you're sitting there thinking like, what? No, I'm not. I'm my own person. And just because I'm a part of this country doesn't mean that, you know, I'm doing all of this. Well, that's all good to mention and say, but it would be even better if you knew already what assumptions they will make. So you try to study your own culture, not only theirs, because you're going to be the dominant culture there, so they will probably try to study you. So if you've studied the same, you know what they've read, you know the stereotypes they're going for, and then when you contradict those stereotypes or confirm them, it will be a lot easier for you to bridge the gap of, you know what they expected and you know what you did. Therefore, you can explain to them why you did it in a certain way, and that will, you know, take away a lot of confusion. And with a lot of confusion taken away, well, that will just gain everybody, will it? Wouldn't it? Will it not? So yeah, that was everything for me today, mate. I think I got some clear and very important points made out there. It's soon video 100. Woohoo! Probably reaching 2,000 views by then. Yes! Lots of good stuff going on all over. Tomorrow, as I said, we're going to talk about Hofstede's 4 key dimensional cultures yet again, but from this time on, it's going to be the negotiation perspective. And I know that I said this a couple of weeks ago, and people are going to be like, oh, this is the PowerPoint you're doing, because just when you were done with that, you said that you had another one, and yeah, that is the thing we're going to go through tomorrow, even though now you know all of this, so it will be a bit faster. So that was a bit rambling in the end. Hope this helped. If it did, leave a comment, leave a like, subscribe, and have a nice one, mate. I'll see you tomorrow, even though I will be exhausted after going up at 8 AM and go to the gym. Well, you know what you do. You gotta motivate yourself somehow, right? You gotta fit it in somewhere. So yeah, have a nice day, mates, and see you tomorrow.